All right, and welcome to this edition of the EV Revolution Show. My name is Kenneth Bacor for episode 103, and as you can see, I have a very special review episode of a lovely brand new 2020 Porsche Taycan. That's just what it is, Taycan Turbo, this particular model. Thank you for joining me. First of all, I want to have a big heartfelt thanks to Porsche Canada for allowing me the use of this vehicle now. I've only had it for a couple of days. I didn't have it very long because it's a very well sought after vehicle. A lot of journalists are looking to get their hands on this, but I've got it for a couple of days, so I'm just doing a quick impressions and a quick overview of the vehicle. There's tons of in-depth videos that are out there that you can look at, but let me give you some of my thoughts on this vehicle. Now, if there's anything this vehicle has taught me over the last couple of days that I've been driving it is, if I can sum it up, if electricity could take human form, I think the Taycan would be the personification of electrification. It's got a nice little ring to it. Now, it's pronounced Taycan. Think of tie. You wear a tie, or there's a tie in sports, and think of Star Trek 2, I believe, Wrath of Khan. Taycan. There you go. That'll get the name for it. It's a beautiful vehicle from Porsche, and it's the only thing I can say, it's kind of like the closest thing I'll get to probably F1 or something like that as far as driving a vehicle. Now, the Taycan comes in 3 models. They originally launched 2, but then they added the 4S later on in late 2019 or early 2020. So it's the 4S, the Turbo, and the Turbo S. Now, there is no turbo, of course, turbocharger in these vehicles since they're all electric. But what they do is Porsche designs it so that you can get that extra kick like a turbo boost kind of thing. And it does work very well, very neck snapping, I may add. It's been really hard to keep this car within legal limits of driving. I'll tell you, it wants to go. Porsche has a long history in the automotive marketplace, as many know, in high performance and beautiful vehicles, and the Taycan is no exception. According to Porsche, it links their heritage to the future. It really carries forward the success of their brand moving forward. Now, Porsche has committed to spending over 6 billion euros within the next few years on their electrification strategy and portfolio. Quite a significant number. Now, of course, they're part of the VW group. So VW, of course, has been making lots of announcements of electrification. This is falling into that as well. Now, I mentioned those 3 models, and they all look the same. There's a little bit different badging on the back of it, but they are just beautifully sculpted cars. A very wide stance, low stance. They have an air ride suspension, which makes it adjustable. You can adjust it up and down a bit, low, and there's different, of course, driving modes, sport, and all this kind of stuff. I've been kind of running it in normal mode for the most part, which is very, very quick, I may add. There's no really reason to drop it into other modes unless you're taking this into the track. Extremely grippy tires, they're very sticky. I mentioned on my last review that I did of the VW e-Golf that vehicle drove like it was on rails. This one ups it. It drives like it's actually painted to the road. It is that good. You can take corners, the rear follows the front right around. No hesitation at all. This thing turns on a dime, stops on a dime with the big brakes, as you can see. It's just a lovely, lovely performance machine. Now, this is the first production all-electric vehicle with an 800-volt system. Everything else is based on 400 volts for electric cars. So what that means is that this will hold more energy density and be able to charge much faster as well, especially with the exception of Tesla and their supercharging. A lot of vehicles can't take advantage of any fast speeds beyond 120, 130 kilowatts or so. This vehicle can. Now, as I mentioned, it's got the 3 models. The Taycan 4S starts with only 562 horsepower based on 19-inch tires with a 0 to 100 kilometers or 0 to 60 or so seconds or speed, in about only 4 seconds. So that's pretty slow, I guess, by comparison, right? I don't know. Then you can move up to the Taycan Turbo, and that will generate 670 horsepower based on 500 kilowatts motors. Now, these are all-wheel drive vehicles, and that'll take you to 0 to whatever in about 3 seconds, 3.2, something like that. Then if you want to spend money on the top of the line, Turbo S, now that has features like launch control, overboost power, and so forth. That'll produce 560 kilowatts or provide you with that kind of power to push you over 750 horsepower for an equivalent. Very, very fast for a street legal quantity production vehicle. Top speed is up to 260 kilometers per hour. So if you're in the Autobahn, this is the vehicle to open it up. It loves speed. It loves that kind of driving. But I don't know that. I stayed within legal limits, folks. And it'll give you a sprint speed below 3 seconds into the 2.8 range, which is extremely fast. I mentioned charging times and power. This has a 92 and change kilowatt hour battery pack that's usable. It does support fast charging, as I mentioned, up to 270 kilowatts. I don't know if I'm going to get a chance to be able to actually try that out. My battery's not that low. I started when I charged it up to full the other night there, the first night I got it, and I started with about 400 and change, 475 kilometers or so of range on a full tank, or full tank of electrons that is. So I haven't really been able to liquidate that very much, even with some spirited driving, I may add. But they do claim 5 to 80% in about 20 minutes or so. As I mentioned, it's a 93.5 kilowatt hour battery pack. I mentioned the sculpture and the design of it. The beautiful design is always keeping with the Porsche heritage. Provides a drag coefficient of 0.22, which is pretty slippery. The only one that I know that's better right now that's being advertised anyway is the Lucid Air at 0.21. So this is really, really nice. Now, you know, I can go through some stuff about infotainment and menus and apps and all this stuff. Yes, it's got all that, folks. Trust me, in spades. 10.9 infotainment, you know, nice digital display on the binnacle, all kinds of different things you can set it. A little control panel that you can control some of those features closer to where you are. You don't have to reach up to touch the screen. It's got voice functions. You can say, hey, Porsche, and take me to a coffee shop or whatever, and it'll do that kind of stuff. It's got some luggage compartments. It's got a frunk, excuse me, and a trunk, of course, a boot. The front compartment has about 81 liters of capacity, and the rear about 366 liters. Hey, you don't buy these to cart stuff around. You buy these to drive and to cart some friends around. Now the meat of this vehicle, of course, beyond the battery system, and it is wonderful, I may add, in the power, is that it's an all-wheel drive, and it's made it to a two-transmission or two-speed transmission installed on the rear axle, which is an innovation that Porsche developed specifically for this vehicle. The first gear gives the Taycan more acceleration from a standing start, so it gives you that launch capabilities without even having the launch control model. From a standing start. And then the second gear kind of kicks in with a long range ratio, ensuring what that does is ensures high efficiency and equally high power reserves. And it can also apply at very high speeds. So like if you're in the highway and need to pull out and pass somebody, you're already doing 60 miles an hour, 100 kilometers an hour, so you need to go out and pass a truck, something like that. This gives you that boost at high speeds to do that with that two-speed type of transmission. Now I mentioned that this sticks to the road like it's painted on, and part of that has to do with the tires, of course. They're lovely sticky tires with 245 45s up front, if I believe, and 235 40s, a little wider on the back. They're higher sidewalls than I would normally think, but it gives it a very pleasant ride, and that's probably the main takeaway that I had. One of the main takeaways from this vehicle, you know, made it to the adaptive air suspension that it has, because it can be, you know, lowered and risen a little bit, lifted, is that the ride is really pleasant. I was expecting a bit of a bone-jarring ride, like a little bit of a history with Porsche there. They grip the road, but you're not the most comfortable. This is very comfortable. This drives really nice. It hugs the road. It handles the bumps very well. You know, I was pleasantly surprised with that experience. Now I mentioned, you know, the handling. It has dynamic control sports modes and torque vectoring and all that kind of stuff with the all-wheel drive with 2 electric motors. It has very high recuperation as well. They claim that it's very unique. You can get up to 265 kilowatts in recuperation energy. Now, I didn't select a driver profile. I kept signing into this vehicle as a guest because that's what came up. So every time I turned the vehicle on, I had to reset a lot of my settings as far as what kind of driving mode I was in. Driving mode stayed, but things like recuperation automatically turns off and some other functions, so I kept having to turn those on. The recuperation is very light. It's not very heavy. You don't feel it. It does help, and if it's off, you coast. There's really little recuperation or regenerative braking. But you know, Porsche is claiming that you can get up to 265 kilowatts of that in recuperation. Now the interior is all Porsche. It's German, it's solid, it's a high-end interior. It's flawless from my perspective. You won't find any squeaks and rattles and fit and finish issues on this vehicle. If you do, they're going to be so minor that the Porsche engineers are going to come screaming out of the factory to look at them, because they're built that well. So this is a very solidly built car, just a beautiful interior. Again, very much a driver's vehicle. The rear seat is a little tight if you have some passengers. It is a 2+2. You can get a 5-person variant. You'd have to order that rear seat a little bit different configuration than you see here in the pictures. Otherwise, it really is a 2+2 driver's vehicle. So in my short take with the Taycan, I've been able to drive up in the country here into some of the country roads and put it through somewhat of its paces. Again, the speeds that I could do legally here are nowhere near the capabilities of these vehicles. But the driving dynamics, the stickiness of the tires, the suspension, the handling, the power is incredible, folks. It really is neck snapping. I know that the ludicrous mode Teslas are in that 2.8, 2.9 3-second range. Certainly the Roadster at 2.4, 2.5, I believe, somebody will quote me, or even lower, is extremely fast, but it's not out yet, so we'll have to wait and see what happens. This is an extremely fast vehicle. Took a couple out, kind of launched it for a quick, couple of seconds just to see how fast I can get up to 60, and people were just blown away by the speeds. I know that that's a fairly regular occurrence now with people driving EVs, especially some of the more powerful and faster EVs, but on this vehicle, with the handling and the surety that you're on the road, that you're planted on the road, and that this car is going to take care of you is unparalleled in my opinion. I have a little video here of when after I picked up the Porsche. I just got on the highway just to show you the lane keeping and the adaptive cruise control. Watch this. It is a very high-priced, high-performance, all-electric vehicle. A fantastic, lovely, beautiful vehicle that Porsche has developed and brought into production. But it's priced accordingly. Now, that entry-level 4S that I mentioned starts at about 120,000 Canadian, only 120,000. That's for the base model. So that puts you really into Tesla Model S long-range, pretty well the ludicrous mode, I believe, territory here in Canada, or pretty close. So it's got very good competition in that, and this handles extremely well. You go up to what this is the turbo model. It prices out after your before your taxes at $193,240 Canadian. Yes, you heard me right. And if you want the top of the line Turbo S, you're going to be in excess of $220,000 Canadian. Now, one other cool feature is that this is a very quiet car. Right now the air conditioning is running and you can barely hear the fan, the condenser and the compressor and everything that's going on there. It's extremely quiet. However, you can turn on a mode of sound and it gives it a engine rumble kind of space age whine thing. It's like going through a warp speed generator or something like that. So have a listen at the sounds. All right, so just some quick driving impressions. I've been going on and on about the handling and just the superior experience that this vehicle gives you, and it really does have just gobs of power and handling. Now, one of the things I right now have it on quiet mode. As you can hear, I'm doing about 60 kilometers, 70 kilometers an hour. I'm going to turn the electric sport mode on, and hopefully you can hear that whine. Kind of sounds like a spaceship blasting off there into Never Land, basically, at the speeds that this thing can do. It is just a phenomenally fast car. It doesn't have launch control, but it's pretty fast off the line. And let me just test that here. I'll just do a quick 0 to 60 here. I'm stopped, and I'll just hammer it. So that's the shifting, the 2-speed transmissions, as I mentioned, with the turbo boost type of capabilities that get you from 0 to 60 in the 3.5 second or so range on this particular model. So overall, just a fantastic driving experience. I become speechless in this. Really, not much to say. It's everything that I would expect it to be and more. Well, my final thoughts of the Porsche Taycan are this. It's just an ultimate vehicle. It really is a fantasy vehicle. If you can afford to get one of these, you will love this vehicle, especially if you're in climates that are conducive to what it is today. It's fairly warm. It's pushing 30 degrees Celsius here with some humidity. This car just thrives in that. Now, not to say it won't drive in Canadian winters, but I would probably feel pretty bad taking this out in the snow. It'll handle it well. I know in Nordic countries and everything, they got a lot of snow. If you put some great snow tires on this and it'll do great. But I wouldn't want to get our salt and all the stuff that they put on the roads here in Canada onto this vehicle and have to worry about it. It's just a beautiful vehicle. But besides that, you know, it really is, as I mentioned, that personification of electrification. If I could take an F1, and I know that there's the E-Series as well in racing, but if I could just kind of take an F1 and put it into a consumer street legal production vehicle, I think this would be the equivalent. It handles that well, folks. It just, everything about this is flawless from a handling and the capabilities. And I know I did not have any time to take this to the track or really kind of put this car through its paces. I know it's certainly much more capable than I was able to put it through on just some country roads and some highway and city driving. As I mentioned, the range, I mean, the battery range is not prominent. It shows you the range on the dash in a small thing. When you stop the car, you can press the battery button to see the state of charge, but that's about it. They don't focus on the electrification side of this vehicle at all. It really is focusing on all the performance side, changing your driving modes, your suspension setup, your chassis setup, all that kind of stuff, all the amount of power that you can give and the tuning of it that you can do through the electronics here in the vehicle. That's what Porsche brings to this game. I didn't even care what the state of the charge was of the battery because it has plenty of range in the times that I was driving it. I only plugged it in once just to see what I could get on a full charge. This is a relatively new vehicle, just had under 4,000 kilometers when I picked it up. So I'm sure the battery is still trying to sense itself out. But as I mentioned, well over 400 kilometers of range, over 450 in these nice warm temps, which is more than adequate. Now you can drain that pretty fast by slamming this thing, but even in driving it a little aggressively, I found the battery to still maintain itself quite well and not dip as it would in other electric vehicles. So I'm very happy that Porsche has come into the all-electrification game with a vehicle of this magnitude. Yes, I do talk about mass market and the adoption there. And you know, if I won the Super Lotto jackpot or something like that and wanted to drop some money on a Ferrari or a Lamborghini or a McLaren or something in those classes, and I wanted to stay all electric, I would look at this vehicle, folks, because it is that good. It is just a fantastic, phenomenal vehicle. If you've owned a Porsche in the past, you know what they're like, you know what some of the things you like and some of the things you might dislike about it. But this has nothing, absolutely nothing that I dislike about this vehicle at all. It is just perfectly sculpted and flawless in the execution of its electrification powertrain and all the goodies that come with it. So would I recommend this vehicle? Of course I would. Why wouldn't I recommend this vehicle? It's a beautiful vehicle. And if you've got the money, take the plunge, get this. You will not be disappointed, folks. So by the way, I felt like a rock star driving this thing around for a couple of days, going to get a coffee through a drive-through, through Tim Hortons or Starbucks, wherever I happen to be. Everybody stops and looks at this vehicle. Even driving down the road, stopping at a light, people are thumbing up, waving, hey, what kind of car is that? It really is a head turner. Now I have to go back to my lowly Leaf, which I love, of course. But hey, that's okay. You know, I get to live a dream for a couple of days, and that's the beauty of getting access to some of these vehicles. So again, I want to thank Porsche Canada for allowing me the use of this fantastic vehicle that I've taken really good care of. I parked it every night in my garage, just with itself by itself in the garage, making sure that nothing touched this vehicle. I kept it as safe as I could because at that price tag, you buy it, you break it, you own it, and I don't want to buy it. So, but anyway, I want to thank them for that, and thank you for taking the time to watch this episode. Hey, that's it for this episode 103 of my impressions and review of the Porsche Taycan turbo in this particular model. Beautiful vehicle. Again, thanks everybody for watching me on YouTube. Please subscribe and like and do a comment. I'd love to hear your feedback on this vehicle and what you think of the shows. Thank you for all of that. Of course, humble thanks to my Patreon supporters. You know who you are. If you're interested in learning more about Patreon, check out the website here. Even a couple of bucks a month, if you think you want to support me that way, would go a long way as I continue to try to better the shows and do things. Hopefully, maybe next year we'll open up to travel. I'll be able to spread the wings again and try to get to places where I normally wouldn't be able to get to. So I want to thank Patreon supporters for that. Of course, my PSA, everybody stay safe. I'm going to do what you need to do. Follow your local guidelines. Please do that. And, keep your eyes on the electrification landscape. And until my next show, please everybody stay safe, and I'll see you when I see you. Take care, and bye-bye.